The Wright brothers, Howard Hughes. Two names that redefine what we think of when we say aviation. And I'm going to introduce you to a third. His name is Wade Irely, and he is the creative force and driving force behind the Beacon private jet subscription service. But before Wade was in aviation, he was in intelligence. He worked for the National Intelligence Agency and for the White House. Most notably, Dick Cheney, if you could believe that. What made him leave Washington to take to the skies? I have a hunch. And I think it starts with those words we've all said just a couple of times throughout our lives. What am I doing with my life? Let's find out. Now, how do you turn this thing on? I'm taking off. Wade, before we get started, like I told you before, I have to geek out really fast because my friends and I, we've always talked about the jet. That's like the goal in life. We need a jet. When a friend of mine actually came and told me, they were like, oh, this company called Beacon, have you heard about it? It's from the guy who did Surf Air. And I'm like, oh, okay, this sounds amazing. They're like, you gotta get him for the show. I'm like, I don't know, he's kind of busy. He might say no. This is what we like to call in the industry a get.
I've never been a get before, so...
Well, you're a get,
yeah, I
because
appreciate that.
especially for what this show is about, you're definitely a get for sure. Geek out over. I'm a professional. Let's start this going.
I'm happy to be a get. I'm flattered.
Fantastic.
That's new for me.
Well, there you go. You went to school for economic policy. You did a master's in public policy, and you were in Washington. You were in intelligence. What made you get into that in the first place?
So I graduated undergrad. I was the first graduating class after 9/11. I graduated in May of 2002. I had lived abroad for a couple years. I'm a Russian speaker. And I remember watching the plane hit the second tower on TV. And I just thought, that's not where the fight's going to be. But if I'm doing that, then somebody more useful can be, where the fight is, essentially. So I applied after 9/11 to the intelligence agencies. And in 2002, I got a letter saying I was hired, subject to a security clearance. Filled out a security clearance, and 5.5 years later they called and said, your security clearance is done, do you still want to do this? So
okay.
Started in 2007.
Nice.
So that's, yeah.
Well, in an interview somewhere that I found, you said, I was scared by my career path. I could spend the next 15 years sitting in the same seat. So in 2012, I packed my bags.
Yeah.
What was the fear? Because some people might hear spending 15 years sitting at the same seat means job security.
Yeah, so job security has never been particularly appealing to me. I think it's a bit of a misnomer. Perceived job security is just putting your faith in someone else's decision making, right? Lehman Brothers can go bust. AT&T could die tomorrow. And so I would rather be in control of my own destiny. The government is a very stable place to be and to work, but it means by its very nature, it attracts the most risk-averse people, right? You go to the government because of the security. So, and I'm not wired like that. I'm a very risk-tolerant person. And so I wanted to make some bets, including a bet on myself, and that isn't something you can really do in the context of the government. It's very hard to make a bet on yourself. It's really hard to hold yourself out and say, look at what I can do, let me run. That's easier to do in the private sector, where if it fails, it comes back on me.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask you, is failure important when you're trying to build anything?
It's not necessary, right? You learn from success just like you learn from failure, but you learn quite possibly different lessons, and you certainly learn them in a different way. I would rather learn from success than failure, but I am very comfortable learning from failure.
Surf Air was your first dive into it.
Yeah.
What worked, what didn't work, and then why did you leave?
So many things. So we started an airline, right? Bought planes. We did 3 rounds of financing in 6 months. We did an equity round, a debt round, and an equity round. Okay. Ultimately, that meant we lost control of the company faster than would normally happen. Among the things we did very right was we built a very strong company culture. Really low turnover rates. People were very happy at work, exceedingly productive.
Right.
We were doing something that had never been done before. People caught the fire of that vision, and I saw a team work as hard or harder than I'd ever seen before. You can't pay people enough to work that many hours.
Right.
There are things you do in life that matter and things you do in life that facilitate those things. Work always facilitates, because family always matters.
Right.
So it's okay for your family to matter, and it matters to me. So people are happier when they're validated, when they know they're respected, when you appreciate what they do. Expressing gratitude goes a long ways.
Right.
And as much as we like to believe, in America, it's a core work ethic that we, work harder, work smarter, you can do it. And that's a big part of success, and not the whole picture, right? You can be the hardest working, smartest working person ever, and if timing is wrong, it's not going to matter. It's important to know that you're valued, important to know that you're making good decisions, and when you're not, you address that, privately, quietly.
Right.
You always praise publicly and correct privately.
I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine before this happened, and we're like, yeah, Beacon's pretty much changing the face of aviation, about, it's a whole consumer driven, it's, all that stuff. And we were actually talking about the golden age of flying. Now, I wasn't born for that.
Sure.
I don't even think you were born
Nope.
for that, because I literally just was in Los Angeles a couple weeks ago, and I flew coach, middle seat, no seat back screen.
Great experience.
Guy next to me had bare feet on. It was just not a good experience. So how are you changing the face of the game?
So what happens in traditional aviation is, the model is a privilege-based model. So when you first started flying in the golden age of flight, pilots are gods among men, celebrity chefs are cooking in first class. You were the only guy you knew who'd left Boise. Everybody, when you got home, everybody said, what was it like to fly? Right? Flying itself was a privilege. Tickets make sense for things that are a privilege. Concerts, movies, ball games. And when flying is a privilege, tickets make sense. 80% of people who fly once in the year. It's still a privilege, even though the experience might suck. For people who commute, who go New York, Boston all the time, it is not a privilege, it's a chore. And you don't pay per cost for chores usually. You don't pay to go in Gold's Gym every time. It's a chore. It's something you need to do.
Right.
It's good for you.
Yep.
Not necessarily something you want to do. So if it was $8 every time you went in the door, nobody goes to Gold's Gym. So you buy a membership and you go as often as you want. And that makes a lot more sense for something that's a chore. So we focus on the flying community for whom flying is a chore, first off. And then we change a commoditized transactional model, which is the tickets,
Right.
into a relational model. We have the same flyers all the time. They know each other, they know us. And we aggregate their experience over a long-term period. So we make the bet every month on service that you will renew with us, right? It's
Right.
month to month. You'll come back because you loved it. So our frontline personnel, right, their entire job description is to make the experience right, whatever that takes. If that means it's a daddy-daughter trip on Father's Day, right, and our concierge takes a picture, blows it up, puts it in a frame, and when you land at the end of the day, gives you a memento of your trip.
Wow.
Things that you do when you're building a relationship, right, that you don't do when it's a transaction.
Right.
It's very much, if you thought of it, you're building, it's like dating, right? You are always trying to impress the person across from you. You spend a lot of time thinking and being very thoughtful about what they're going to appreciate. And it's not always big dollar things, right? Little things make a big difference. When I was dating my wife, I brought chocolate on every date because I knew she loved chocolate, right? And it worked. I only needed it to work once. So turns out I was buying a brand of chocolate she didn't like, but nonetheless, the effort was appreciated. That is how we approach. We're a sales and service company. Everyone thinks of us as an airline.
Right.
We're not an airline. We are a sales and service company. We sell people and then we keep them happy.
Right.
And whatever that takes, whatever that means is what we do. Airplanes is one way we keep people happy. But if you're not happy at the end of the month, you'll leave. We have to be a satisfaction engine.
This is a very intimate plane. I don't know. You say it's community, so I'm gonna take your advice and say it's community, because I don't usually, when I get on a plane, it's headphones in,
don't talk to me.
Don't speak to me.
So that's exactly what happens in a transactional dynamic, right? You don't know the other people you're flying with at all. at Surf Fair, I think we saw in the first year 11% of our flyers had done business together. You will actually get to know people. And what's interesting is everybody is at the same level by virtue of being able to pay for it, whether Work's paying for it or you are. They're all at sort of the same place in their careers. And so you see fascinating things happen. I remember a flight where we had an Academy Award winning director of an animated film, a graphic novelist, and an architect, and me sitting in club seating like this, 4 seats. And those 3 guys, it was like an hour-long bro hug. They were all leaned in, super intense, and I didn't understand what was going on, right? Why they all met for the first time, and it was really intense. We got off, I asked the architect, I said, what was that about? And he said, oh, all 3 of us do the same thing. We all started as freehand artists, and those 2 guys represent the paths I didn't take. And so it was really it was interesting to me to talk to people who had essentially the same level of success in the path that I didn't choose. Now there are the seats in the back where you don't have that, right? Where you're not facing. So if you need to get work done, you're just gonna I flew back there yesterday because I just slept on the whole flight. But you do, it actually spurs conversation, and building those relationships, actually having people connect, really improves the quality of their experience. Now you're flying with friends all the time. But yeah, and the whole point is that you're here 37 minutes. You got to the airport 10 minutes before your flight.
This is a glamorous way to travel for 37 minutes, I will tell you that.
There is literally no faster way to Boston.
He also said in an interview somewhere, and you actually said it in Russian, that everything you do with your friends. What is the significance of having like that good friendship base, that core team around you?
I remember that interview actually. That was a funny interview. I was on Hulu at the end. I think trust is critical enabler of success. If you bring people into your team and they have an opinion that you don't agree with and you just overrule it out of hand, you are not, A, it's not going to last long, and B, they're not being able to deliver their full value. It's okay if people have different opinions, but if you got a team of 4 and 3 guys are telling you need to do something different than what you think, you should probably double take and listen to that. Friendship is the product of time spent together. The more time you spend with people that you admire or value, the more, the closer you'll become as friends.
Right. Why the aviation business? It is so competitive. It's so tough. I mean, gas alone is ridiculous. Why put not all your eggs, but why put most of your eggs in this kind of tumultuous business?
So tell me about the businesses that aren't tumultuous or hard or competitive.
I mean, I can't.
Neither can I. So aviation was fine.
But aviation has it's like severe.
So it's got a reputation for being exceedingly competitive. Margins are very slim usually. Our model is so different that our margins are very different. And so we see a niche and an opportunity there. It's a pain point we all personally experienced, right? I can't probably fix cable companies and healthcare systems.
I don't think anyone can fix
those. But aviation, I felt like we had a chance. And I flew at one point 27 days a month. So this might be a vehicle by which, I hope this is a vehicle by which I can do good things, that I can help people, that I can provide a livelihood for a lot of people, that can save college funds, and like I hope this can have a really positive impact in the world, that dads can be home for Little League and moms can make it in time for dinner, and overnight trips turned into day trips is actually life altering for people who are gone all the time, which is our flyers. So really proud to be able to do a lot of that. And so that I think is good. But I think when it comes to destiny, when it comes to, are we meant for something, I just don't think it's very often professional.
So the vision for this, has it changed since you were at Surf Air? How is the whole vision of what you intended to do when you first started Surf Air changed with Beacon?
We're at a higher price point than we were when we first started. We're not a budget play. We're a time savings play. People who buy it are buying back time in their lives. It's like buying a microwave. You can cook faster, you bought back time. That's really what we are. We're a very nice way to buy back time.
What would you say you've learned, or what did you take with you to the business world that you learned from your family world, being a father now and one of 8 kids?
Prioritizing and saying no.
It is hard to say no.
It's hard to say no, and it's the single most important trait in a dad. Right? You want to give your kids everything. And if you do that, they never learn to struggle for anything. And there's a lot of value in the struggle. And so knowing when to say no and make them figure it out or learn it on their own is a challenge for every dad. It's a challenge for me. But as you get better at that, the more kids you have or the longer you've been a dad, like that crosses over and begins to influence other things. And then the other one's setting priorities. I think in the context of being a CEO, knowing how to prioritize, seeing what is the one thing that really matters today is probably a dominant trait that good CEOs will have. I'm not sure I'm there yet, but hoping to continue developing that. Right?
How would your 5-year-old describe you?
Gone. Before he hit kindergarten, right? He didn't really know. Now he knows Dad's gone a lot. So I was living in Dallas and working in New York and commuting, coming home on weekends, and he started to realize Dad's not home, right? And I walked him to bed 3 months ago, and we're going up the stairs holding his hand, and he sort of slumps over, and I said, "What's wrong, buddy?" And he goes, "You won't be here in the morning." Oh. And I was flying out at 4 a.m., right? And so I knew something had changed. We moved the family to where work is, and trying to figure that out. But absentee dad's no way to do it.
Right.
So my wife would describe me as intense. I used to describe myself as chill. She was like, "I think you need to reevaluate."
So what do you want? Like, if somebody were to literally ask you, as I am right now, what is it that you want? I don't necessarily know if it's professionally, if it's personally. What do you want right now for yourself?
There are things I feel like I need. I need to be able to give my family a level of stability that I haven't given them in the last 5 years. My son started kindergarten 3 weeks ago. I said, when the kids ask where you're from, what do you say, son? He goes, "I don't know, Dad. I don't know where I'm from." It's heartbreaking, right? And he was born in Virginia. Then we moved to Maryland, California, Texas, and now Connecticut. He doesn't know where he's from. And my very risk-averse wife has been up for it, right? And has been really supportive of me chasing the things that I wanted to do, while simultaneously setting aside a lot of the things she wanted to do professionally to raise our kids right now before they go to school. And super admirable choice, and it was her choice, but really hard, right? So if I could give them some semblance of stability, some sense of place and permanence, while being able to chase the things that are important to me personally and professionally, that would be of great value, right? That'd be a gift. What I want is to be better than I am, and I don't know if that's too esoteric, but that's the struggle every day.
That's it. To be better.
That's all you can ask, right?
That's all you can ask.
If I could be better tomorrow than I am today, that was a win. At the end of the day, for me, if you're on your knees and you're like,
yeah,
I hope I was better today than yesterday.
So what have we learned? That this job of following your path, it's not 9 to 5, It's not 10 to 6, it's however many hours it takes. And it's a decision that everyone has to make about how much you're willing to sacrifice to reach for the stars. I'm Buki Elegbede for What Am I Doing With My Life? And I'll see you guys next time. Oh yeah, this is the only way to fly. Thank you, Beacon.